Damn, monster.
Yeah, I broke my rule. Second one of the day today. Don't tell Sarah.
All right, I've had 4 espressos today.
Okay, so we're on the same level here. That's good. What's up, Internet? You're tuning in to episode 6 of the FlipScreen Games podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide, wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friend, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello. You nailed it this time, Pete. You didn't forget halfway through like last week.
I'll tell you what, Steve. I'm in rare fucking form today, you know? We're recording this one on a Saturday evening. So that means I've already been podcasting for a few hours. I'm about halfway into my second monster of the day. My basement hasn't flooded this week. I'm feeling pretty good. You know, I don't want to jinx things, but I'm ready to come here and talk about some video games. I'll tell you that. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, yeah. I've been a bit busy prepping. I'm going away for an anniversary trip tomorrow, so I'll be talking about that on next week's One More Thing. So yeah, it's been a nice weekend. I did a stew. I thought it was going to be colder weather than it was this weekend.
Yeah.
And a stew in 22 degrees centigrade heat. Probably not the best choice, but it was still tasty nonetheless.
You know, I think what you just do is just turn the AC down, right? Make it a little chilly in the house, and then you just eat the stew.
If only we had central AC.
Oh, yeah.
No one in this country has it.
Sorry. All right, so as much as I would love to talk more about stew with you, that's a conversation for One More Thing. Speaking of One More Thing is, of course, our Patreon-exclusive podcast, which you can get access to if you go and back us on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames, just like our Patreon producers did for the month of September. Of course. We are so thankful for their support, and their names are Christopher Valens, a.k.a. That Doc Guy, Zaid Ida, and Wakahula. Remember, if you want to become a Patreon producer, get access to One More Thing, where this week we talked about having kids, among other things, and a bevy of other really cool perks, I think. You know, you can vote on what games we stream over on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/FlipScreen Games, as well as a bunch of other cool goodies that you can get access to. So if you want to go...
Early access. That's like a big one.
Early access. I always forget to mention that.
Yeah, you get every episode a day early.
Yeah.
Both Nintendo Noise and the FlipScreen Games podcast. So if you sign up for things for the red coin $5 tier level, then yeah, you get every episode early.
Yep. Yeah, so go check it out. We've gotten a lot of great support there so far, and I think that we've got some good goodies over there. And we are always working on new ones and kind of thinking about how we can improve what we're offering. So if you do have any thoughts of things you'd like to see, let us know. We'd always love to hear from you. If you want to support the show, that's the best way to do it. But if you can't, don't worry. There's lots of other ways you can support the show. You can like us wherever you're listening to us, send your comments in, and get your questions right on the air in our question block segment by joining our Discord or writing to me at questions@flipscreen.games, or go in and follow us on social media at FlipScreen Games, where we also will generally will ask our weekly main topic question or talking point over on Twitter. So if you want to get in the mix and become part of the show, part of the community, those are some great ways to do it. And, again, even if you don't have a couple bucks to toss our way, if you're enjoying the show and you like what we've been putting out, let people know. You know, if you've got a gamer in your life you think would enjoy the show, who'd enjoy coming and being part of our community, that is one of the best ways you can help the show. So please do that. All right.
I've got one last request before we move on for every listener. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go and do us a massive favor. Just either rate the show 5 stars or leave a review. It helps everyone know that the show's fantastic, which hopefully you think it is, and it helps other people find it. So Apple will promote us a lot more and bring us higher up the search engine if we have ratings, which we start at ground zero, so we don't have any at the moment.
Yeah, so please go give us those 5-star ratings. They really, really, really do help us out and don't cost you a thing. And I'll say similarly, if you're an audio listener and you don't watch the YouTube channel, go give us a subscribe, even if you don't plan on watching it. Everybody has a Gmail account, so you've got a YouTube account, and those subscriptions definitely help us out. So yeah, help us build the channel there. And one thing I did forget to plug, we did an extra special episode of this show, in case you missed it. Steve and I did a episode 5.5, I think we called it for audio listeners. It is, it's an extra episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast where we reacted to the PlayStation Showcase 2021. Lots of really exciting announcements there. So yeah, if you want to go hear our reactions to Spider-Man 2, the reveal of Insomniac's Wolverine, Knights of the Old Republic's getting a remake, God of War 2, crazy showcase, and we had a lot of fun talking about it. So go check it out. All right, so that's enough shilling for now. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, right? The Life is Strange True Colors review in progress, I'll say, because I haven't finished the game yet, but I am knee deep into it. So thankfully we pushed the show back this week, and we're recording a couple days late. So I had ample time to spend with the game, and I am right now in the middle of chapter 3. So I am like dead in the middle of the game.
Okay, so you know how many chapters there are then?
There's
6,
5.
are there? 5, okay.
Yeah. So the fact that I'm midway through the middle one, I think I'm just about at the 50%
pretty
mark
much there, yeah.
here.
So, how are you enjoying it so far? Then I know it's a totally different character with different powers. Does it still feel like Life is Strange, or does it feel like it's I don't know, another similar game of the same genre?
So, yeah, I guess so. Just to give you the elevator pitch, if you're not familiar, Life is Strange True Colors is made by Deck 9 Games. This is their second game in the Life is Strange series. Of course, the original and Life is Strange 2 were both made by Don't Nod, who's the developer who actually created Life is Strange. But, Square Enix is the IP owner. They have, as a studio, decided they want to go work on IP that they own. So that was they did tell me why, and they're moving on to new projects. So Life is Strange is now being worked on by Deck 9, who was the studio who did the prequel to the original Life is Strange Before the Storm, which is going to be part of that remaster collection that's coming out early next year. So Deck 9 is a studio that has worked on the franchise before, and I thought they were a great steward of it. That game had no business being as good as it was, frankly, because it was a prequel that no one really needed or asked for, starring a character that didn't have powers, and Ashley Birch was unable to voice Chloe because of the voice actor union strike that was going on, the SAG-AFTRA strike at the time. So she consulted, she worked on the script a little bit to make sure that they were keeping Chloe's voice, but another actress had to portray her. So there was every reason for me to come into that game and not like it. And they knocked it out of the park. And it was short. It was only 3 episodes. So I was always impressed by what they did, and I always kind of hoped that they would get a chance to either work on their own franchise or maybe do a spinoff that was a little bit more meaty. So the fact that they're kind of the studio taken over now feels natural. And in terms of does it feel like a Life is Strange, it absolutely does. And just to let you know, this will be as spoiler-free as possible. I won't spoil anything that wasn't, in the basic marketing material. And there's one thing from the marketing material that was a spoiler that I also won't touch on because I don't want to spoil anything for you. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But overall, I love the game so far. I definitely had reservations about the powers more than anything because, like I said, I like Deck 9. I trusted that they get Life is Strange and that they would give me a game that felt like Life is Strange and that, nailed all the beats that it needed to in terms of the writing, the character relationships, the music. All those things are excellent, and I think they've totally nailed those things. I was worried about Alex's power is that she's an empath, right? So she can feel other people's emotions and essentially kind of see the world through their eyes. So she can experience exactly what they're experiencing and kind of help them through it, and that's kind of how you end up interacting with a lot of characters is when people give off extremely strong emotions, she's susceptible to them. And it's kind of about you going through that journey of her figuring out how to take control of that and use it to help people. And that felt abstract because, the original Life is Strange, you have time traveling powers, and there's a lot of obvious applications for how that could work in a gameplay loop, right? Of like, okay, like I need information, but I don't want to piss this person off, so I can talk to them however I want and learn whatever I need to learn, and then rewind time so they're not mad at me anymore, and then I can advance the conversation in a different way. Like there was like puzzles that you would solve by being like, I can go in I can break this window and go in here and get the key that opens this lock, and then rewind time, and I never broke the window, and I made it in, and nobody knows I was there, and like things like that.
That sounds really cool.
And those are you can see how that would work, right? Whereas like having the ability to feel other people's emotions is like it's a more abstract superpower. And it was one that
it also kind of seems more realistic, though. It seems a little bit more grounded, that maybe there could be someone who could actually be like this emotional sponge and take on what people feel like, rather than, oh, someone's got time traveling powers. So I guess I kind of like that. I would have the same concerns as you, though. Where does the story go? And what is the kind of general story as a whole? Like, what are you exploring as Alex, and what do her powers kind of unravel for you?
So yeah, so I'll get into what the whole story is about in a second, because it ties to another point I want to make. So to answer that, what's cool about the empath thing is I think it's a really great conduit for story. It allows you to interact with characters in the same way that Max's powers did in the first game, like I described, where you could, have conversations and get information that you really shouldn't know without facing consequences. And this is kind of the same thing, but it's done in just like, you're not manipulating people quite as much. You're more like reading their mind. But the other thing is that she can also do it with objects. So like if an object was a part of a very emotional moment, it'll have some of that emotional energy kind of left over or whatever. So you'll see auras around. Go ahead.
So like an example would be if someone, say, threw something in a fight, that would have like an aura around it.
And when you would scan that, you would hear the two characters involved with the fight, and they would be yelling at each other, and you'd get a sense like you were there in that moment. That's kind of how her power works. So she can effectively use it to like read people's minds, kind of. It's like it's a mixture of her literally feeling their emotions and feeling exactly what they're going through, but also is able to like learn information that she couldn't have got unless they were forthcoming with it, which, certain people are obviously not going to be, especially people that she doesn't know that well, right? But she needs information from. So in terms of the overall like framing device, the kind of story is that Alex is moving to this small town called Haven in Colorado. She is, I believe, 20 or 21 years old, and she's just coming out of the foster care system, and she's going to move to this town where her brother lives, and she and her brother have been like they haven't talked to each other in like 8 years, because when they were kids.
This sounds so familiar. To tell me why. Like someone went and was separated from their sibling, then moved back to a really small town.
It's
like, that sounds very, very familiar.
There's definitely a similar framing device there for sure. Which I mean makes sense, right? Tell me why is a don't nod joint. So, but yeah, so she and him basically, that when their family split up, I believe because their mother died. I haven't totally figured that out, but that's kind of the sense I'm getting. And he ended up going to juvie, and she was put in the foster care system. So they haven't, they were separated and weren't in contact for years. And he finally finds her. He's been looking for her for a long time. He gets in contact with her. They reconnect, and he asks her to come, move there. So that's kind of where you're at and where you're exploring. And what the actual overall plot is about is something that has been spoiled in the marketing material. But I don't want to say it here. If you haven't gotten it through that already, like if you haven't read a synopsis of the game or seen the original trailer or whatever, if you've only heard me talk about it, that's actually probably my biggest criticism of this game so far, is that I think the marketing material has done the first chapter a major disservice, because it it spoils a plot point.
Oh, that's a shame. So the only thing I have seen of this game was the last trailer thing they showed at E3, where you see Alex, I think it's in a coffee shop talking to someone, and you see like two of the choices,
Right.
and it was like a little snapshot of the gameplay, but I haven't seen anything spoiled. We should probably do a talking point on spoilers in marketing because Metroid Dread seems to be suffering that a lot at the moment as well.
Yeah, and I take pretty big umbrage with it because it was, I think, the original trailer where they spoiled this plot point. And it's like, if you read the Wikipedia synopsis or anything like that, like it's literally everywhere. Like people are spoiling this event, and I really wish I had been able to go into the game without knowing what was coming, because it's a great moment, and it's played really well. It's extremely emotional and dramatic, and it was surprising, and like it still shocked me, but it did lessen the impact because I spent the whole episode being like, isn't this gonna happen at some point? Like, do I remember that wrong? Is that not what it said? Am I projecting something that, whatever? And then like it does happen, and it was like, oh, okay, like so it was that, and it.
No, yeah, I totally get that. It's like when someone says, "Oh, there's a really good twist in this movie," and the entire time
you're waiting for it. Then
sat there watching and like, "Oh, I wonder what it's going to be. Is it going to be this person does this instead?"
And I just wish I didn't know
that would be really annoying. Yeah, I do not want to know because I think I will end up playing this game.
You should,
but well, I want to ask you, and I want to let you get through your points, but I do want to ask you,
yeah,
is this a good jumping on point for the franchise, or should I wait for the remastered collection to come out next year, which obviously was due, I think, next month? And should I wait for those? Because that was my plan. I was going to play those two first and then move on to True Colors.
I think it is. I don't really feel like you will lose out on anything by playing this game first and then going back and playing those games. Like, I think that the worst thing that you can say about Life is Strange or Before the Storm, right, is that like they are at this point they're kind of old. Like, they're, I think, 5 or 6 year old games now, and they were indie games developed on a tighter budget when they were made. So like there are things about it that are like, that feel dated, like some of the animation and things like that. Those are seemingly all things that are going to be fixed in the remaster. So to my mind, like, I think the only reason not to play this game first is that maybe you will be spoiled by some of the, advancements present in this game because it's a game that came out years later.
But I feel that anyway because I played Tell Me Why, and I guess that would also have some of those advancements.
Right. So with that in mind, I don't think there's any reason for you to not play this because
and it's not like it links in. They're not referencing Max or previous characters from Life is Strange 2.
No, they're Easter eggs. There's a character in this game who is a main character, a supporting main character, who is a very minor character in Before the Storm, which is the other Deck 9 game. So they brought one of their characters into this, this game. But like, in my interactions with her so far, she has not mentioned that she's from there. She hasn't mentioned her connection to that part of the world or anything like that. Just it's kind of like I know Steph. Okay. Cool. And like,
that's cool. So is this like a shared universe then?
Yes.
Or is it just they're reusing the characters?
No, it's a shared universe.
That's pretty cool.
Every Life is Strange game or every Life is Strange takes place in the same universe, and like every one of the games has had references to the others. So the original and Before the Storm are directly related, right? Before the Storm's a prequel, so there's lots of crossover there, obviously. But like Life is Strange 2, the two main characters have no relation to Max or Chloe from the original game. But like Arcadia Bay, where they're from, they're like, there's like a news report that you'll hear at one point where they're talking about something that happened in the first game and how, whatever decision I made, they talk about the aftermath, right? or like I made a certain decision, so a character who died in my run through of Life is Strange, somebody that they were related to shows up in Life is Strange 2, and the decisions I had were reflected in where they're at as a person. So it's like minor things. It's not like a Mass Effect situation where it's like, oh no, I killed the fucking deer in Life is Strange 1, so now there's an apocalypse in Life is Strange 3. Like, it's not like that, you know? To what I've seen, there's less connection between this and any other previous Life is Strange game than the other ones beforehand. I haven't, like, had any major encounters where it's like, oh, that's a big thing. You know, it's like little things. Like, there's a record store in the town, and there's a poster for a band that is like Chloe's favorite band, right? And like that's like a okay, cool, I recognize that, right? Or there's like the same T-shirt that one character wears is up on the wall, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like little things.
No, that's cool. Yeah, it's fan service, little nods to the other games, but it's not direct references. Well, that's fine. I feel like maybe then this would be the one to pick up first. The only other concern I've seen a bunch of people have, both on Twitter and there's been some discussion of it in the Discord, is the price point for the game. Now, I know you're always very much defending that, you know, these games cost money and we need to pay for them, and $60, you know, might seem like a fair price point. This is the most expensive Life is Strange game to date, from what I can tell. I think the previous ones were max $40, so they've jumped up to 60 from, I think Life is Strange 2 was 40.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? And obviously, this is not episodic like the previous games were. And do you think it's better delivered in one package, though? It's not like you're waiting for them week by week as they're still developing them.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify. Like, it does have clear chapter points, but it is all in one. It's as if you had bought these games now, you know? So I am often the person who takes that fairly unpopular opinion, right? That, like, video games should probably cost more. That doesn't mean that, you know, I don't, that I'm not, like, sympathetic to the point that, like, video games are expensive already, and like you only, you know, many people can only buy so many games, right? So I understand that, like, for me as somebody who has a certain amount of expendable income, it's maybe easy for me to say that, right? So grain of salt, I totally recognize that. However, I do feel like so far this game has been worth my investment, because I think the fact that this game is $60, I feel is reflected in the quality of the game. I think, like I said, Life is Strange, you know, especially the original, right, were like a budget title, developed on like a tighter budget that I'm sure Don't Nod would have liked, you know? And for me, you know, I look at this game, the animations are a lot smoother, the graphics look a lot better. You know, I have heard about some people running into technical issues. I know that there's definitely been some. I haven't experienced anything significant. I had one glitch where it has accessibility settings for font, and one of the things you can do is put like a dark background behind the text so it's easier to read if you're vision impaired. And that just like turned itself on, and it wouldn't turn off. But then when I left the building I was in, it turned itself back off, and I was like, okay, cool. So it's like, that's like a very minor thing, right? Like, if that's the worst thing I experienced so far, that's all right. The only other thing that I think I've noticed is, like, I think the frame rate is locked at 30. It definitely seems like it has a lower frame rate, which is weird at first, because I feel like I'm so used to 60 now, that when I first started playing, it kind of took me a minute to get used to some of the, like, the motion blur and things that, you know, you don't really get when you're playing 60 FPS locked.
That might be an artistic choice as well, because I know studios like Naughty Dog have spoken about it before, that they always give you the option between 60 and 30, and their cinematics, I think, are always at 30, the same as Spider-Man's. So it goes from 60 to 30 because they want that cinematic movie look it might actually be in its favor for Life is Strange, even if it is a technical reason why it's set to 30, not 60.
And that's ultimately how I feel about it. Like, I got used to it again very quickly, and it's not something that I'm thinking about while I'm playing. I noticed it when I first put hands on the game, and I think, it's not an action game, right? Like, that's not what this is about. It is a cinematic experience. So I think that, those artistic advancements are something that, like, I feel like are worth paying for. The game is really good, and I'm really enjoying it, and I know that it's going to be done probably sooner than I'd like, but I really feel like we as gamers need to stop applying length to a game as being like an inherent part of the value.
I agree with that, but that is contradictory to what you said before, that people only have a finite amount of money to buy a finite amount of games. And if the amount of time you can spend with something that's going to entertain you is what you perceive as value for money, then obviously people will continue to attribute length of time to that. You could play, say, if you're Chewies, play Animal Crossing for 1,200 hours for $60. That's probably very good value compared to something like this, which is what, 6 to 8 hour game?
I think it's probably more like 10.
Okay.
I think every chapter is like about 2 hours, but it'll probably be longer if you play the way that I play, where I'm like really trying to find all the collectibles and make sure I talk to everybody and, take my time a little bit. Yeah, and I respect that, right? Like, I would never, if somebody tells me that they don't feel like this game is worth $60, then, I guess my answer to that would be like, all right, I guess wait for a sale. Like, that's fine. But for me, like, I am a Life is Strange fan, right? Like, I do love Life is Strange, and, I make no bones about that. I have a fucking Life is Strange tattoo. So
no, you don't. You're just a big fan of the
I'm in the Illuminati, okay? So like I get it, right? Like you may not feel that same way, right? But I feel like it comes down to the similar conversation we had about like Pokemon Snap, where I feel like I like this franchise, and not only do I like this franchise, I want more games like this. I really like choose your own adventure narrative adventure games. I really appreciate them. And I don't feel like it's fair to say that like this genre of game is not worth $60, which is inherently, I feel like, what you're saying when you say like, oh, it's not worth it because it's 10 hours, right? Well, it's like, if it's over in 10 hours and I remember it and think about it for years to come, that's cool. Like, I'm fine with that. And, like, I don't think that you have to make the argument, right, like, that every game that has an emotional impact, has to cost that amount. But, like, for them to give us this experience, like, if that's the price point they need to hit. Because I compare it to Life is Strange 2, which was $40, and I loved that game, but it did not look or run as good as this game does. And
yeah, I mean, that's totally fair. I mean, I don't know. I can see why people would be upset with the price point. But I also think that this is the kind of game that will go on sale fairly soon. It's also going to go down in price fairly soon. So if you can wait 2-3 months, I'm sure you'll be able to pick up for $40 at some point.
Yeah.
Or even less.
And I was a big old Marky Mark. I bought the special edition, I think the Ultimate Edition or whatever it was, because it comes, if you bought that in advance, you get the remaster as well. And
how much is the combined package then?
It was $80, so I'm saving.
Well, that's actually a good deal.
Exactly, I'm saving like $20 on it in the long run. So I was happy to make that trade off.
I wondered why it was so expensive, because I've just seen that one on Amazon. It was a lot more than the base edition.
Yeah, and it comes with some extra like in-game outfits and stuff that are bullshit. Like, it's like, like, it's cool or whatever, but I wouldn't have spent extra money on that, right? Like, what I wanted was the remaster of the original and the prequel. But yeah, I mean, for me, like this game is hitting all the right notes. Like I really, really like the cast of characters. Like I have found that them focusing things on one town again, rather than Life is Strange 2, which had like a road trip element to it. That was cool. And it led to opportunities that, the original and the other games in the series wouldn't have had the ability to do. But I really like how the original being set in Arcadia Bay, the town and your relationship to it is such a big part of the game. It almost kind of feels like it's its own character, right? Like people love to say that about certain settings. But Haven feels that way. Haven feels like a special place that every episode I get to explore different parts of it, and you keep going back to the main street where all the businesses are, and things are different every episode because there's stretches of time that have gone by, and you find different things, and there's just all these really cool storytelling opportunities for you getting to know a space more intimately, and the designers being forced to re-examine and recontextualize a space and be like, the last time you were here you saw this, what do you see this time? And there's a reward to that that I really do think is a welcome return. And I really love the cast. Like I already feel emotionally invested in them and their relationships, and I feel like there's been a lot of really strong dialogue. That's something that some people have definitely criticized Life is Strange for in the past. Some people, just don't like parts of the script or some of the way that the characters talk or things like that.
Is it like unnatural dialogue or something?
I don't think so, but it's that a good example is that Chloe in the original game says hella, which is a piece of slang that is pretty much only said in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there's an in-universe reason why she says it. But everyone's just like, teenagers don't talk that way. She would never say this, and there's this kind
she's a big boomer.
No, it's just a thing you've not heard because you're not from San Francisco. And instead of taking some time to try to understand why that's the case, people are like, this is bad. That's my take on it. I've never felt that way. Obviously, I'm a fan of the series, but I'm not alone in that. So, but I found that there's a lot of really strong dialogue in this game, in the more heavy emotional moments, but also just I find Alex to be really funny. A lot of the dialogue they've written for her, kind of internal monologue and commenting on things. She's very sarcastic, and she has a wit to her that definitely vibes with my sense of humor. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and I think it's worth for my money. I think it's worth the cost of admission. If you are feeling like you have a bit of sticker shock and you want to wait for a sale, I think that's totally reasonable. Everybody's financial situation is different, but I personally think I'm at a place where I'm taking a stand in terms of I want to see more games like this. I want to see more narrative adventure, choose your own adventure type games, but I also want to see more games that are bold enough to ask for a $60 price point and deliver a tight, focused experience that's under 20 hours and prove that is worth it. Because that's
yeah. Do you know? I agree. I think games have kind of got too long. I would point to say The Last of Us Part 2. I feel that game was maybe 5+ hours, a little bit too long, that it didn't need to be. And that was probably because they were like, we're charging this much money, we need to hit this number of hours. And I feel that if you were ruthless in what you're cutting out, you could have got that down and it would have been a tighter experience.
And I think it's especially something that I want to advance the conversation around, at least on this podcast, because when you look at the numbers, most people don't finish video games. That's a fact. We know this. Most people do not finish the games that they start.
I never finish anything.
Hell, right? I was going to say, one of the hosts on this show is guilty of that exact thing.
And you know what? I don't think there's any shame in that, because I feel like if you got your money's worth, you had your enjoyment with it, and you moved on to something else, that's absolutely fine.
That's absolutely fine. But my point being, why are we putting so much value on the length of games that most people are not fucking finishing anyway? You know? Like,
Yeah.
Does it matter if a game has 100 hours worth of content if you buy it and play it for 10 hours and stop? Or
yeah, I would love to see the statistics on how many people finished Persona 5 and how many people finished Red Dead Redemption 2 and games like that.
And I'm not saying those games shouldn't be that long. I played both of those games, loved both of those games, and finished both of those games.
No, I think those games shouldn't be that long.
I don't
really
agree.
do think those games shouldn't be that long.
I don't agree. At least not Persona.
Why not release them in 2 parts and don't spend 6-7 years developing it and release 2 smaller games in 3 years?
I don't know, because I mean, why do it that way? There's no reason to do it. At that point, you're saying you want to spend twice as much money on the same amount of content.
Yeah, exactly. That should be the motivation, right? It's like, well, if we do it this way and we don't spend this much time on it, we can charge $60 now and $60 in 3 years' time, and people will still be happy because there's still 30 hours of content instead of 60 hours of content, or 50 hours of content instead of 100 hours of content. I don't think people would have complained if Red Dead Redemption had a little less.
A little less. I'll give you that. Sure. Persona, I don't know. I don't feel like it needed to be shorter. I liked it. It was good. But you know what? Oh, excuse me. I sneezed. Oh, God. Excuse me. But to your point, you know, I think I generally agree with that. Is that, like, I would rather a game, you know, have a tight and memorable 25-hour experience with no bloat than a 50-hour experience where there's a bunch of stuff I don't feel like doing.
Yes, I agree with you. And my favorite experiences I've had with video games have been the ones where I finished them in 2 or 3 sittings, and I've sat down and I've got gripped and hooked, and I've played it for like 4 or 5 hours straight over a weekend, just finished the game. I did that with the last game I did that with was The Last of Us Part 2, and I just had such a good time with it that it stuck with me. And we obviously did that spoiler cast, which you can find, I think, on our Patreon.
I think
I'm
it's
not
there.
sure though. Yeah,
I don't know.
it's somewhere.
But yeah, I generally agree, you know, and like there are plenty of long games that I've really fallen in love with, obviously, but I love a game that is confident enough to be 25 to 30 hours, or maybe a little longer, you know.
No, see, I think 30 hours is a long time. That's a long commitment. That's like watching 10 movies, and it's like 10 big movies in a row, 10 Marvel movies in a row.
Yeah, I mean it is, but I mean I think that's also like certain genres of game lend themselves to that, and that is part of the expectation. And you know, like a game like The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, you want to spend like 60 hours in. I spent 70 hours in that game. That's not even a lot by most people's standards, but like I had a great time with it. You know, I enjoyed every one of those hours. And I don't mean to say that no game should be that long. I really don't. I think it's that like not every game needs to be that long, and I think that we need to be okay with the idea that like $60 doesn't have to equal a certain time investment, right? That it should be a sign of a quality that's being hit. And I think if you can make the argument that like you feel like there are indie games that are higher quality that are being sold for less, why don't we have the conversation of why we don't pay more for indie games then? Or if you feel that way, you know, maybe you don't buy the AAA games that are coming out at that price point. But like, you know, Life is Strange at $60 is you know, for my money and for the kinds of games that I, you know, love and feel like are underserved as a genre in terms of how many of them we get, I'm happy to put my money where my mouth is on this one.
Fair enough. I'm curious though, one last point before we move on. Would you have paid 70 for it and been happy with the 70 price point that Sony's pushing for this game?
I think that probably would have stung a little bit. You know, I think I think it at $60, right? When like you know, because if you're buying it on PS4, right? Like it's also $60. To my knowledge, anyway. So that doesn't feel great to me. Me thinking of it as a next gen title that I'm spending $10 less on, it's like, okay, like that's, I can wrap my head around that, right? Because like $60 is like what I spent on like Miles Morales on PS5, you know? And this is a similar amount of content.
Yeah, whereas Miles Morales I think was 50 on PS4.
Right.
Like it was $10 more on the newer platforms.
Yeah, so I could see that argument. You know, if you're playing on a last gen console and you're like, oh, you know, I spent $10 less than this on Miles, and that feels like it's more worth it to me. You know, that's fair. That's fair to say. You know, I certainly understand why people feel that way. You know, this isn't a me being like incredulous in the way I am about how video games being $70 is like a thing that I'm like, no, like I really genuinely think that's fair. For this, I see the other side of the argument. I just, for where I'm at and with the enjoyment I'm getting out of it, I'm good with it. You know, you'll have to make that value judgment for yourself. But I think if you're a fan of Life is Strange, in general, this game is great, and it is absolutely something that is worth your time and dollar. And if you're on the fence about Life is Strange, but any of the stuff that I've talked about over the years or today appeals to you, I do think this is a good jumping on point if you are, you know, not scared off by the price, you know. And if you are, in which case, you know, maybe you wait for the remaster and, you know, and a sale. All right. So I've talked about that enough. Let's jump into our talking point this week, which is arcades, because and it's interesting because it's also, we're still in the what we're playing segment, because I guess that's just this whole show this week.
That's the whole show this week. Yeah. We did the news as a separate episode. The whole show.
I didn't even get to talk about. There's another game I played this week. Should I talk about it right now, or do we want to jump into the?
What did you play?
I on my vacation restarted and got to the very last boss of Shovel Knight in about a day.
Wow. So what you're saying is you're prepping for the speed runs, and
I thought about it.
Game's going quick. You're gonna be doing that.
I genuinely thought about it while I was doing it this time. I was like, maybe I should try to speed run this game. I've never done that before.
Yeah, that you should do that as a marathon stream one weekend on twitch.tv/FlipScreen Games.
Yeah, see how many runs I can do.
Mm-hmm.
That's an idea. That's an idea. I might do that, bud.
It might sell me on Shovel Knight as well, because I still haven't played it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love an excuse to play that game on stream and stuff. So yeah, if you guys are interested in me trying to speedrun Shovel Knight, let us know. But yeah, when we were hanging out on my vacation, there was some downtime when we were just like hanging out at the cabin and stuff, and I pulled out the Switch, and you know, the thing I've been playing in my downtime lately has been, of course, Pokemon Unite, but no internet. So I decided to pop back into Shovel Knight, which I've been talking about doing for a few weeks, and I blazed through it. I think this is my 7th time beating it. I think I figured out.
Nice.
Maybe
it's nice, good.
It might be 7th time beating it, because I still have to beat the last boss, but I did the 2 levels preceding her, and then stopped. So I'm gonna have to knock that out one of these nights. But yeah. It was a good time. Everybody should play Shovel Knight. One of the best games ever made. All right.
I'll believe you, because I don't have any plans to play that game anytime soon.
You hate platformers. All right. So now let's jump into our talking point, which is part 3, I guess, of what we're playing this week. And it is all about arcades. So Steve, I know you spent some time at some arcades. And I think most notably, as anyone who follows you on social media saw, you were playing some DDR, which we all know is a big game in your history. And I saw you getting out there, you're getting sweaty, you're fucking rocking and rolling. So let's talk about it.
So yeah, I spent a couple of days at the beach, and in the UK, you go to the beach, it's just riddled with arcades. They're everywhere. So we went into a few arcades. Macaulay shoved. I don't know if you have them in America. 2p machines that you just shove like 2p's in, and it like goes down, and it has these like things pushing forwards, and it
Yes.
pushes a bunch more 2p's off if you get them. Macaulay's obsessed with them, and that was what Macaulay was doing. So while Macaulay was doing that, because I just find them really boring, I don't understand why you just funnel 2p's into a machine. There was a DDR, which we in this country call dancing stage, not DDR. So there was a dancing stage. I
Dancing
don't know why it's
stage?
called that. Blame Konami for calling it dancing stage. I don't know why. That's
Whatever.
what it's called.
Fine. Whatever. That's ridiculous.
And it said Dancing Stage Euromix 2, and I was like, oh, it's not the original, but it's okay, It's not the one from my childhood. I got there, put my money in. It was the original game. It was just mislabeled. It had the original software on, so I was like, this is fucking great. I knew all the music.
Oh my god, that's
and
awesome.
I didn't realize how good I was at this game. So I played it on easy. It was too fucking slow. So the next time I went, I ramped up to medium. I played this 4 times in a row. By the end, I was dead, and I ended up fucking my knee up for the next like 2 days.
Hell yeah.
But it was fun. I had such a good time, and I went down a bit of a rabbit hole. So I was talking to my friend Nick, who's a big DDR fan, and he has a like metal dance map that you can get.
Yeah.
So I was looking at those.
I bet
I
you
was
were.
like, I wanted to spend £600 on a dancing stage mat, because people buy the old arcade machines, and rather than just keeping these old arcade machines alive, which takes a lot of work, because they're like running old CRTs, and it's just dated, and you're stuck only playing a certain selection of games. People buy these old arcade machines, they separate the stage, and then they sell the stages. Just like the bit that you dance on as a separate thing with adapters, so you can plug them in. And there's a game called Step Mania for PC, which allows you to basically play any song. And the community makes levels for each of these songs, so you load your own MP3s in, and you can just play anything. So I was like researching all of this stuff down this total rabbit hole. Really wanted to just drop an exorbitant amount of money on
How much are
these
they?
dancing stages. So they range in price. So do you remember like back in the day on the PS1, you had those mats that rolled up essentially, and you would plug them in. You can still get those. They're like 20 quid. And then
But
it
you want the
ranges
metal
all the
one.
way up. I want a metal one, and the best ones are the ones people make themselves as like DIY kits, and then you buy them and you assemble it together. They cost around 600. There's like a good middle ground where it's hard plastic and they work pretty well. They're ranging around about 100. So I think that's probably where I'm gonna land, is the £100 mark, and then play Step Mania on my computer. Because I really want to get back into it. I've missed playing DDR. I love it. I love rhythm games in general, and it was just my childhood. But it got me thinking about arcades, and that's why I put the question out. Because we played a bunch of other games while we were there. There's a Walking Dead game now, which basically is like House of the Dead, but themed
Oh, cool.
as Walking Dead. So I was there using the like pump action shotgun thing to shoot stuff. Light gun games, you just
I
don't get
miss
them at
light
home
gun
anymore.
games,
I
you
miss
know?
light gun games so much.
So fun.
Like House of the Dead was my go-to when I went to the arcade as a kid. House of the Dead and Crazy Taxi were the two.
Yeah,
And I'm
absolutely.
curious, like, what you used to run for when you were going to the arcades, or did you even go to arcades? Because a bunch of people apparently didn't, which we'll get to when we read out their input.
Yeah, so I had a pretty good amount of arcade experiences growing up because similar to your what you described in the UK, if you are familiar with the Jersey Shore, which is where a lot of folks go for beach vacations.
The hit MTV TV show.
Yes, of course. Um, in that little slice of heaven, there are a lot of arcades. And, when I was growing up, whenever we'd go to the beach, it would often be, we'd go to Point Pleasant, we'd go to Keensburg, we'd go to Seaside Heights, whatever, and all of them had a mixture of, the kind of arcade carnival games that you think of where you do goofy shit and win prizes, but then they would also have arcades. And I was always more interested in the arcades. I liked winning stuff, but I loved going to the arcades and, trying to win tickets and buy Pokemon cards or whatever the fuck.
So that's the other thing I didn't touch on was all these ticket machines.
Yeah.
We ended up getting a bunch of tickets we just saved for the next time we go, because you will spend literally hundreds of pounds to get something so shit out of the cabinet.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. But as a kid, right, it's not my money, so it felt like I was earning something. So I remember me and my buddy, my best friend growing up, Jimmy, we spent a whole summer where we went to the arcade every time my mom would take us, right? We would go. And we saved up our tickets for the entire summer, and they had this big it was like a box, a big box set of Pokemon cards, and it was all of the different it was like a grab box basically of a bunch of full box sets of the cards in sealed packs. So it was probably 100 packs of Pokemon cards. And we saved these tickets up the whole summer. And I remember the last time we went, we finally had enough to get them. And we got them and brought them home and opened all of these cards and were trading and just, okay, you keep this one, I'll keep that. I need this, you need that. And that's just such
when you go trick-or-treating for Halloween.
Yeah.
You bring it all back, you pull it all together. Yeah.
But instead it was imagine if you had trick-or-treated every fucking weekend for for months, for a whole summer, which feels like fucking forever when you're a kid, And it was such a triumph that we had fucking gotten this thing, But also, Chuck E. Cheese was a big thing back in the 90s, and there were 2 locations in New Jersey that were near where I grew up, as well as this place called Funtime America, which I don't know if is still in business, but was a few years ago, and me and my friends would go there and play laser tag when we were in our 20s. Well, not that I'm not anymore, but you know what I mean. Some of them aren't. So there were a lot of arcades around me when I was growing up, so I have a good amount of experience. And Time Crisis, House of the Dead, the light gun games were definitely ones I would go for all the time. Shout out to the X-Men arcade game. Shout out to Marvel vs. Capcom was always a popular one. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was a really popular one. I remember the first mega multiplex that opened up near where I lived. They had an MVC2 machine and a House of the Dead machine, and then some fucking racing game that was whatever, and me and my friends never cared about it. But it would be I remember going to the movies so many times and being oh, can you drop us off an hour early so we can play Marvel? Or our friends, whoever's mom or dad that took us is buying snacks and waiting in line, and we're there fucking playing House of the Dead before the movie. So many fun things like that. But this one game that so always sticks in my mind is there was a Jurassic Park game that was like that.
I remember it.
It was
you sit in the thing,
in the
right?
Jeep. Yeah, and it was the whole. It was you'd get in it, and you and the other person had guns, and all these dinosaurs were coming at you. And they had that at the Chuck E. Cheese that I used to go to. And I remember my dad used to take me there a lot because I've mentioned before, I think, at least on, One More Thing, that my dad was a sailor, and he had a boat that was maybe a 45-minute drive away from where we lived or something like that. Who's to say? But I remember it was kind of a trek. And oftentimes when we would go there, when we were coming back to come home, we would stop at Chuck E. Cheese, and he would take me there for a couple hours, and we'd go play arcade games together. And then we'd either eat there or we'd get McDonald's on the way back or whatever, and that was a weekend, And this fucking Jurassic Park game, I remember he and I played this for what feels to my memory years. It was a game that we would always just go and try, and we'd run out and we'd give up or whatever. But I remember there was this one day where it was like really raining and we had to leave the boat early because we just weren't able to get whatever we wanted to get done. And we spent like hours at Chuck E. Cheese, and the only thing we played was this Jurassic Park game, and we were just feeding tokens into it until we finally got past this part that we had never gotten past before, and we were like, oh my god, this is the farthest we've ever gotten. And then I remember we played for like another hour or so and finally finished the game, and it was like one of those things where like there's almost nobody else there, but there's like a few people who were like watching us at the end because we were almost at the end, and it was, it was making all these noises and shaking, and it's just like I have such a vivid memory of that experience with my dad, and like it's like one of my fondest memories of being a little kid.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. We never had anything like Chuck E. Cheese in the UK. The closest I would say, the closest thing I could think of, it's like a Hollywood Bowl where we would go, and that would be where kids had parties and stuff, right? They would go to the
same kind of
bowling lanes, and then they would have the arcade like attached to it, so you'd spend like a couple of rounds of bowling, and then go and play in the arcade for hours at a time. But the only time we ever went to arcades as a kid was when we were on holiday. We would go to like a caravan park that had an arcade on site, or it was one at the beach or something like that, and that was the only time we ever really played arcades. It wasn't like each weekend we were going to the arcades or anything, and maybe for the old birthday party, like I said, a Hollywood Bowl, but other than that was it.
I'm trying to think of like, I would also be like the odd kid where it would be like if there was an arcade that had a section of like a bunch of retro games, I would always be like, oh
yeah,
it's like this fable, like it's Donkey Kong. I've never played Donkey Kong. Like, oh man, and like definitely helped me.
I remember the first time I got off the first like stage of Donkey Kong. When you rescue Princess Peach the first time and you go up to the next level, and you're like, oh my god, there's more to this game.
Yeah. You know what I had a moment like that with? I remember when it was the first time I went to Disney World. They had this, there's like an area there called Downtown Disney, and they have like, kind of like attractions that are not like park level attractions. It's like, it's very much kind of, I don't even know if it still exists. I think it might be called something else now, but it's like a place that
like in Disneyland Paris, that's called the Disney Village. And there's like it's like basically a fake street where there's like a load of things like
a couple restaurants, bar, whatever.
Restaurants, things like that, yeah. And they have like live music there at nights, things like that.
Yeah, so probably a similar vibe. And I think it might be called like Disney Springs now or something, but whatever. And I remember I was there when I'm like maybe 8 or 9 years old, and there was this place called Disney Quest that was an arcade / a bunch of like experimental like video game type attractions. Like that was the first time I ever tried VR, and this is like the year 2000. I remember they had this game where it was like VR goggles, and you'd pop it on and you sat on this platform, right? Like it was like a little, like a plank of wood, I guess, but better than that because it's Disney. And it was like a 4D experience as well, because the whole game was that you were Abu from Aladdin, the little monkey, and you were riding on the carpet. And it was like everybody had these goggles on, so you're in this virtual environment with other players, and everybody's driving around, and like you had to like hit each other, and it was kind of like the battle mode in Mario Kart, like, but and it was like in 2000, it was like, what the fuck, this is.
So it's like one of those simulator rides, but you're actually doing something with it.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, I used to love those simulators, and I don't know why, because they're really crap when you think about it. It's I go into this dark room, there's a projector screen, and it pretends I'm on a roller coaster, but it never feels anything like I'm on a roller coaster whatsoever. It's the closest experience I can get for £2 at this rando carnival.
They had a really cool thing like that, though, there, where it was like a big bubble thing, and you sat in it, and you designed your own roller coaster, and then like the whole premise was that you were like testing roller coasters, so it would be like do a loop-de-loop, and it would literally flip you, and it was so freaking cool. I don't know. This stuff probably was not as cool as I remember it being, but in the year 2000, to my 8-year-old brain, I was like, this is the height of technology. This is incredible.
Yeah.
But
nothing's ever getting better.
the reason I brought that place up is that part of it was also that it was like an arcade. And I remember they had this one section where you could watch people like, you remember BattleBots? That TV show where people like...
it's still on. It's on Netflix. It keeps advertising.
Really?
There's new seasons. Yeah, it's back.
I should watch that. But they had like a thing like that where it was like they had these pre-made robots and you'd fight, and if you flipped one, whoever won or whatever. And I remember there was a room where you could it was like a pit, and it was like the viewing area, and the whole walls were lined with arcades. And I remember we were watching for a bit, and then I guess got bored or whatever, and I was like, oh, I want to play some games. And they had a Miss Pac-Man machine in there, and I remember I was playing that, and it was the first time I had ever gotten a cleared or past like maybe the second or a cleared board or whatever. And I was like, oh, like holy shit, like I'm so good at this. And like, I got like 2-3 levels in, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm a pro.
You got the animation for the first time where Miss Pac-Man's like chasing all the ghosts.
It's a cutscene.
Do you know, of the classic games, I think Pac-Man's my favorite. When you think of the classic games, like, the Atari ones, like Asteroids,
Galaga,
or the Nintendo ones, or Galaga, Pac-Man's the one. I always go and play Pac-Man. It's about the only game I play on my arcade cabinet.
Yeah, I love Pac-Man.
Pac-Man or some of the Neo Geo games I love.
Yeah, it's right up there for me. If it's not one of the fighting games or the light gun games or something like that I played as a kid, like, yeah, I think Pac-Man is probably the one. I do also enjoy Galaga, and Centipede's pretty fun. Like, there are others that are definitely a good time. I used to like Space Invaders a lot, too. That was one I would always go toward, because it was like...
Oh, that's my dad's favorite, because he played that in the 70s, so he has fond memories of that.
I have a lot of fond memories of just hanging out in arcades and, like, killing Saturdays there, that kind of thing. Let's read some from the audience. Rob Knight wrote in and said, my favorite arcade game is probably Time Crisis or the Simpsons one. Yeah, great answers. Absolutely.
The Simpsons one is phenomenal. I've actually never played an actual Simpsons arcade cabinet, but it is one of my favorite arcade games.
Oh man,
I've never found one in the wild.
There was a local movie theater. Oh wait, no, that was in Tom's River, I guess. I think either way, it was either the local theater in the town I grew up in, or it was Tom's River, where I spent most of my teenage years and stuff. At one of those movie theaters where there was a Simpsons arcade, and I remember like actually getting a group of 4 friends and playing through the whole thing.
Oh my god, that would be so fun!
It was awesome.
So fun. I really want to play some of the modern multiplayer games. Like, what's that one? Is it Black Queen something?
Oh my god, Killer Queen Black. I didn't even think about that. I didn't even bring up MagFest. I've talked about MagFest a bunch of times, so if you've heard me say this, I'm sorry. But so MagFest is a convention that it takes place in Maryland, or at least the one I've been to. I think they have other events. At this hotel called the Gaylord, which is a huge, huge hotel. And they throw like, corporate conventions in it. And then this weird anime, EDM, video game music festival. It's fucking wild. I don't know why they do this there, but it's awesome. And the part of the event, aside from the music and all that stuff, is they have LAN, like a big LAN room where it's just computers set up and you can sit down at a computer and just play games. They have a 24-hour arcade that's filled with arcade cabinets, ranging from like old ass retro stuff to like modern stuff like Killer Queen Black, or like I remember I think it was Street Fighter 5. Yeah, has an arcade cab that is like I think only in Japan, and like they had one. So like it's crazy, and like all of it is donated. It's all people that come to the conventions, donate their stuff for the weekend to be used, and it's this very cool like, hey, like everybody treat the stuff with respect, and like to my knowledge, that's always been how it plays out, right? People keep doing it every year. And then they also have a room that's filled with old retro computers and consoles. So like you can go and sit and play a Commodore 64. You can go and sit. I remember the last time I was there, there was a point where all my friends were passed out and I was still awake, and I went and beat Super Mario World on somebody's Super Nintendo because I had an hour or two to kill before I was tired.
Yeah, I love that. Like EGX here has some arcade cabinets, and a huge section where you can just play like retro games on all sorts of consoles. If you're looking for something, though, I would recommend the National Video Game Museum. If you ever come to Sheffield, it used to be in Nottingham, and it was way better when it was in Nottingham. At least when I visited in Sheffield, it really kind of reined in how much stuff they had there. But you paid for entry, and then everything's like free play.
That's awesome.
So you can just go up to any arcade cabinet and just play. And it's like £6 to get in, and then you just spend a whole day there just playing arcade cabinets.
I love that.
It's good fun.
We have a a place in Asbury Park in New Jersey that's a pinball museum that's like that.
Nice, yeah.
So cool.
I love pinball machines,
They
but they're just not around anymore, really.
No, not really. They have some insanely old ones that are still in working order, and they let you play them, and it's insane. Like,
that's so cool.
The quality is crazy.
The other place that like I've been to that's somewhere like the video game museum or like the pinball place that you talk about is the Computerspiel Museum in Berlin. If you ever go to Berlin, you have to go to the Computerspiel Museum. It's really kind of out of the way, but take the 20-minute journey from the center of Berlin to go there because it is phenomenal. It's so much fun. And we just had a really great time when we went to Berlin and looked around it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to put that one on the list. There's a couple that I'm trying to see when I go to Japan in a couple of years. God willing. And yeah, Killer Queen Black you brought up. That game was so incredible. I played that at MagFest for the first time, and it was like 30 people around this machine the entire time. And it was like you'd wait for your turn, and then when you get up, you play until your team lost. And I remember the team, me and my friend Joey went down and were like, oh, we got to play this. And we got on a team, and I think we won 2 games. So I got to play like 3 matches in a row. And I was just like, this game is so addictive. And I waited another like 40 minutes so I could play it again. And then we lost. And I was like, okay, I'm good. But yeah, that game is so rad. So rad.
Yeah, I really just want to try it. But you have to have a serious group of people or go somewhere like a festival where people are playing it all the time.
Yeah, for sure. So let's jump into this next one. This one comes from one of our Patreon supporters, Affy, who wrote in and said, there's a great bar in Manchester called NQ64, which is arcade games and alcohol. Went once before the lockdown, and it was so much fun. Now that it's all getting easier to get out, I want to visit again. Ended up playing Time Crisis when I went and an X-Men pinball machine. Very nice.
They have a bunch of these, apparently. I looked at their website. So they've got 2 in Manchester, 1 in Birmingham, 1 in Liverpool, and 1 in Edinburgh.
Wow.
Me and Macaulay are going to go to one of these. I think we may end up going to the Birmingham one because it's just down the road. But I adore Manchester as a city, as I've spoken about many times. So I think I probably will end up just like booking a hotel one weekend in Manchester and just going because it looks fucking awesome. There's like neon paint all on the walls and stuff, and they've just got like UV lights just like lighting it up. It looks really fun. I'm surprised you didn't mention like Dave and Buster's as a place where people go to in America. That seems to be like the only chain arcades that are left.
I fucking hate Dave and Buster's, frankly.
Really?
Yeah, I think it sucks. I went there. I feel shitty saying this, but I went there for a friend's birthday. And like I had fun being there with my friends, but I was like, this is bullshit. Like they had like no good games. At least to the one I went to. It was like there was like a bunch of stuff, like I don't know. There was a few things. Like they had an updated Jurassic Park game that was very much like the one I described, and I was like, oh, this is cool. They had a Mario Kart machine, 2 Mario Kart 8 machines, I think. That was very cool. Great. But like there was like a lot of games that were just like arcade versions of mobile games because that's what I guess kids like, or they think that kids like. So there was like
a lot of that exists. There's like fucking Crossy Road one,
or like Flappy Bird.
Yeah, I've seen a fidget spinner arcade cabinet when I was away last weekend. And you spin the fidget spinner, and if you go like fast enough or get it like the certain RPM, you get tickets. It's ridiculous.
And like, I hate that shit. And I I don't know. I get it. I'm a boomer or whatever. Make fun of me. Old man yells at cloud. But, like, these are not video games. Like, I play dumb stuff at arcades like that to get tickets. So, like, fine. Like, it's I don't have a problem with those things existing. But it's the fact that, like, the selection of actually good arcade games that would always be present at an arcade, even that had those kinds of bullshit, like, ticket eater games, was not a trade-off. Like, I felt like there was, like, not nearly enough games that were actually games that are fun to play versus just, like, a thing that you put a token in and push a button a few times and then some tickets come out. And it's like, no thanks. Yeah, I would never go back to a Dave & Buster's of my own volition based on the experience that I had there. That's all I got to say about that. It's no Chuck E. Cheese, I'll tell you
that. Chuck E. Cheese is gone, though. R.I.P., right?
Yeah, I don't think it exists anymore. Maybe it does. I don't know. It probably sucks now, too, even if it does. Honestly. I'm sure it's the same kind of selection. I can't imagine the business models are that different.
I really wish I had a spare $100,000 and I could just go and open my own arcade bar, restaurant, fucking thing. Because I think it just works. As a thing, I think now there are enough people of our age who loved arcades as kids and want those same arcade games. I hear that fucking Dancing Stage Remix tune, and I just want to jump on the machine. It's bizarre.
Yeah. I'm actually really excited. I'm planning on going to Disney World at some point in the near future, and the hotel that Sarah and me and our friends are going to stay at has a 24-hour arcade. That's just free with like your room access.
So basically, you don't need to go to Disney World. You're just staying in the hotel.
I'm just not going to sleep, I think is the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. While everybody else is sleeping, I'm going to be out there fucking playing games. And then, I'll do the parks the next day. It'll be great. Sleep is for the weak. This one comes from Stressa, who wrote in and said, didn't have much of experience with arcades, but I remember playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and The Simpsons. The one that really grabbed my attention was Gauntlet, the N64/PS1 era version. I wasted so many quarters on food and became a huge Gauntlet fan. It'd be the one cabinet I get. That's awesome.
I think I spoke about Gauntlet last week and how it was the one Atari game that I loved as a kid. Because we had this Atari collection. It was on Nintendo Noise, actually, because I was speaking to Nina, who loved Paperboy. So if you haven't heard that conversation, go listen to last week's Nintendo Noise, because there was some good talk about old Atari games.
This next one comes from another one of our Patreon supporters, Tyler Olson, who wrote in and said, the ones that instantly come to mind for me are The Simpsons, X-Men Arcade, House of the Dead 2, and Lord of the Rings Pinball. I played and loved all of those. Hell yes. I was huge into arcades growing up. Pretty much begged my dad to bring me to them whenever we had free time. Same,
that's amazing.
Though. This next one comes from Ray, who wrote in and said, I wish arcades were still around. There were already none around me when I was growing up in the 90s, though. The first arcade I ever went to was in 2017 in Japan. I loved it. That's crazy. Their arcade culture is crazy there. We witnessed like actual teams of synchronized players playing rhythm games in tandem. One kid collapsed from exhaustion. It was wild. I definitely recommend checking some of the bigger arcades out if you're ever in Tokyo. The pandemic hit it pretty hard, but it's still going apparently. A few years back, I had plans to turn my games room into a proper arcade style room and looked into buying a proper Mario Kart arcade GPDX. Sorry. Mario Kart Arcade GPDX machine from the UK distributor, and they said they'd be willing, but it would have cost me £75,000 per seat. XVAT? I don't know what that means, but
so it's $7,500 per seat excluding VAT, which is sales tax. So you would have to pay sales tax on top of that, which is another 20%. So it would work out as like $9,000 per seat.
That's insane. I ended up just buying a classic arcade cabinet in the end and got one of those dodgy 800 games in one boards for it. It's a ton of fun whenever I've got friends around, but I barely use it when I'm on my own. Also, yes, you should buy a DDR machine as long as you live stream your gameplay. Absolutely.
Right, the only way I will ever live stream it is if someone funds. If you all fund my DDR machine, there's
Steve,
no fucking
challenge
chance.
accepted. Are you telling me? Okay, we're gonna do a pledge drive, everybody. We're gonna do a pledge drive on Twitter. I promise you, I'm gonna fucking organize this at some point. We are going to end Zayd, Doc, whoever wants to keep me to this one. Don't let me forget it. We're gonna do this. We are going to do a pledge drive to get Steve the $600 or whatever we need to get this DDR set up, and then we're gonna make him do a multicam stream. So we'll have a stream of your face and of your feet alongside the gameplay. And what we'll do is we'll have it set up where if we hit a certain bits or sub threshold or whatever to be determined later, you have to go longer. And you got to keep going.
Well, yeah, and I think people, pick songs, right? So they cheer with their bits and they pick what song I play next.
Tell me people won't love that. I don't even know if we can legally do that because of the music rights issues, but we got to figure that out. I feel that would be amazing.
If we do it with Step Mania, you just feed it with DMCA free music.
Perfect. You're right. There we go. We got it. Okay, so let's make this happen, folks. All right, we're gonna do this. We're gonna make this dream come true. All right, so this is, I guess this is our last question of the day. This one comes from another one of our Patreon supporters, Trendy Brendy, who wrote in and said, I've rarely been to arcades, even as an adult. So most of my arcade game experiences have been from game collections, unfortunately. That said, though, Galaga is fantastic, and I like Konami's cleverly named Rush and Attack.
Oh my god. I'd never even clocked that Rush and Attack is a play on one.
Me neither. That's funny. Yeah, I definitely would love to make a more complete arcade room in my home at some point in my future.
Me too.
We'll see if that ever happens. Sarah let me get one arcade cabinet and promised to not bring another one into the house, and I did not promise that, so we'll see what happens.
Pinball is not an arcade cabinet, so I think you can get one of those.
You're making a lot of sense,
so that's
Steve.
Fine. And DDR, that's a dance machine. Not
I
an
don't need that.
Cabinet, so
I don't need that.
No, yeah, you do. You do. If I've got to play DDR, you do too.
No, I don't think that's how that works.
Have you ever played it?
Yeah, I'm terrible at it.
How are you terrible at it? You're a musician. You should have better rhythm than me.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's just I like dancing fine. I'm like an adequate dancer. That's maybe a little generous. I'm fine. I'm not afraid to get on the dance floor and dance if the mood strikes. But yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it. Maybe it's also because the culture of DDR, like especially when it was very popular, it was always like you would go and everybody was crowding around the machine and watching and stuff. And I'm like,
yes.
I suck at this and I don't want to make an ass of myself.
Me and my sister, like mum and dad bought us the PlayStation game and the mat for home. We would practice before we went on holiday. For the previous week, we would practice, get good, and then we would go and play the songs we knew. Because not every song from the arcade machine was in the PS1 version. So we'd only play the songs we'd practiced and knew. And people would watch us. And there we were with our A or AAA rank. And we'd feel good. We would feel good.
I had a friend growing up who actually had one of the metal controllers at home plugged into her PS2, and it was like a big deal at the time.
Of course, it's a big deal. They're so expensive now. To get one that's compatible with the PC, they are so expensive. And I think it's because they're so niche now. Yeah. At the time, it was such a huge phenomenon. It was like everyone's playing a dance mat. You can go buy one for like 20 quid from the supermarket if you want to.
Yeah, she had one of the legit ones. I remember she saved up for it for like a whole summer and bought it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's cool.
It was cool. Yeah. Anyway, that's been the FlipScreen Games podcast. If you want to write in just like all these fine folks did for our talking point, almost forgot the name of that segment, or our question block, where you can, suggest your own questions, suggest your own topics, not just whatever, we decide we're going to be talking about. Make sure you write in. questions@flipscreen.games is the way to do that. Or you can come join the Discord where we have a thread every week all about the show. We do the same thing up on Twitter. Of course, that's at FlipScreen Games. Follow us. Come be a part of it. We'd love to hear from you. If you've been listening to the show and you've never written in before, I'm going to challenge you to write in this week with a primo question for us or commentary on whatever our main topic will be. And if you have any questions about Life is Strange True Colors, I will be finishing it this week, so I'm sure I'll have my kind of complete thoughts, when we sit down next week to talk about it. So if you want to write in with any additional questions or responses to what I said this week, please do.
Are you going to play Ghost? Is that on the list for next week, or are you just going to run out of time?
I don't know.
You've also got Deathloop to get this week,
right.
So hurry up.
Yeah, it's getting on top of me. It's getting on top of me right now. I'll tell you that.
I get it. Because like I tweeted last night, I just genuinely don't know how I find time to play games at the moment, because it's just there's a lot that we're doing.
The flood fucked me up. It really did.
Yeah.
The flood and going on vacation, like I lost a week's worth of game time that I needed that to get done. Like I needed that time to play Ghost, and now I paid for Ghost and have not touched it. So I'll have to get to Iki Island one of these days. I promise I'll have impressions for you at some point, whenever I get around to it. But yeah, I guess next week Deathloop will be the topic of discussion. So if you want to get your, because that's out on, is that out tomorrow? When does that come out?
I think it might be Thursday. Let me have a look. Deathloop release date. No, it's out tomorrow, the 14th of September. So everyone enjoy Deathloop if you have a PS5 or PC.
Okay.
I won't be playing it.
So I'll be playing
neither of those.
I'll be playing it. Maybe we'll stream it that Thursday. But either way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You're streaming it that Thursday. I want to see it.
We'll stream it this week then, and I'll start a new file, and I'll get past the preamble so we can just get into it. Or I guess I'll make an extra save. That'll be a smarter thing to do. Yeah, we can do a little stream of that. But write in if you've got questions about it. I know a lot of you in the audience are interested in the game, but maybe don't have a PS5. So if you have any questions you'd like answered with me, I'll have already had at least 2 days to play the game by the time we chat about it on Thursday. So make sure to write in with that stuff too. And of course, remember. Go check out our Twitch channel every Thursday. That's when we do our streams. So if you want to come check out Deathloop this week, that's a great way to do it. And again, if you want to vote on the games we play over there, you can go join our Patreon, patreon.com/FlipScreen Games. And you can also get access to One More Thing, our patron exclusive show, where on this past week's show, we talked about... it's the one that came out today. Time is hard with this, the time shifting. But yeah, we talked all about kids and our plans for the future and all kinds of good stuff. It was a good talk. So, and we also had a quiz where we figured out what part of England I would be from based on what food I like. Yeah,
we learned that Pete loves gravy, lots and lots, especially combined with cheese. So
love it. So go check that out. It was a good time and great way to show your support for the show. All right. So thank you all for joining us here on another episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. We'll see you next week.